Hi, everybody. This is your host, Meilin Obinata, of today's Talk of the Bay on KSQD. My guests for today are Sally Arnold and Matt Farrell of the Friends of the Rail and Trail. Welcome to KSQD.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
So today we're going to do kind of like a deep dive into the soul of Fort, but also understand what's urgent right now. So I understand you have a rally coming up. Does somebody want to fill us in on some details?
It's actually next week. It's May 20, and it'll be to save the tracks. There's a threat to the tracks right now, which I'm sure we will talk about later in our discussion. But if people want to go to railandtrail.org, they will see a place where they can hit the link and sign up to join our rally on May 20. It's really important to have a lot of public showing there. And that's going to be the launch of a summer of activism to save the tracks so we can have both rail and trail.
Thank you so much, Sally. So what is putting the tracks into jeopardy at this moment? Why do we need this event?
Yeah, you'd think that, we voted on this in 2022, right?
Right. A lot of people are thinking, what did I vote for?
Yeah, well, and the opportunity, the question to the voters was, shall we tear out the tracks and put in a trail only? And that went down to a spectacular, historic defeat, one of the biggest defeats ever in our county's history. And so the voters have been very clear, and that was in every jurisdiction. It was in every supervisorial district. It was in every city in the county of Santa Cruz. People want both. They want the rail and trail. But there are some people who seem to have forgotten that, and they serve on the Regional Transportation Commission, the RTC, and they're going to need to be reminded of that. And that's what the rally is about in our activism this summer, that we already told you what we want, and you're not listening.
Okay. So thank you for that. So there is definitely urgency. I do want to help listeners just get to know why each of you were attracted to Fort, kind of what are the values that you hold dear, and why was Fort the thing you were looking for? How about you, Matt?
In my career, I worked in public works focused on transportation, and most of that time I was working on developing and managing parking operations.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
oh, my gosh.
As part of that career, at the end of it, I felt a certain amount of, having been raised a good Catholic, no longer practicing, but having been one, I have a certain amount of Catholic guilt. And so I thought that the right way to try and balance the scales was to work on supporting a transit solution that wasn't car dependent.
Wow, did you go to confession talking about parking?
Well, not for a long time.
Oh, okay.
I haven't done any parking confession lately, but I felt like this was a good effort to try and change the equation in our community.
All right. Well, thank you for atoning. Thank you, Matt.
You're welcome.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Sally, were you also in parking operations? I'm scared to ask.
No, I was not a car promoter. I was actually an elementary school teacher for most of my career. And when I retired, I was looking for a place to put my, skills and energy. And, I care about a lot of different things. I care about the environment. I care about economic equity. I care about the segregation that we have in our county that we, tend not to talk about. I care about the quality of life, safety for children. And so there was a lot of places I could put my energy, but I kind of stumbled onto Friends of the Rail and Trail, and it's such a positive, forward-looking organization. And I saw that if we could succeed in getting rail and trail built in our county, it would impact all of those other issues that I care about. And it's a real leverage place that will help bring our community together. It will help give access to economic and educational opportunity. It'll keep children safe because they'll have a safe place to ride their bikes and learn how to ride. It'll decrease our greenhouse gas emissions, and it will also decrease the pressure on our suburban up in the hills in our community to keep building ever broader suburbia, but rather allow us to concentrate housing near the rail line where people don't necessarily have to own a car, so we don't have to keep widening the highway and we don't end up looking like San Jose South. And and so it was. I felt like I could put my energy here with really wonderful, positive people, and I could affect a lot of issues that I care about.
Thank you so much, Sally. So, is it okay to be interested in the Rail and Trail if, let's say, like I'm very right wing, or I'm an independent, or I'm a Democrat, or a Green Party, or what? Does that matter?
We have such a big tent. That's another thing that's really delightful, I think, about Friends of the Rail and Trail. We have people who we work with every day that we disagree about all kinds of things. We have everything from the Republicans to the socialists. We have people who, worked on opposite sides of various campaigns, but we agree on this. And in our, the way our culture is right now, where it's so divided and so polarized, and everybody's kind of vilifying people who are different. I love that I can work with people and really hear them who I disagree with on other stuff, but we can say, well, put a pin in that and let's work together on this thing we do agree on. And it really kind of ratchets down the temperature. And I think I don't think I appreciated it that much when I began working with Friends of the Rail and Trail like 8 years ago. But given what's happened in our country in recent years, I really I value it more and more now. It's a really it's a good place, good people to work with.
Do you have any spicy anecdotes of like a surprising interaction to find like a surprising ally or supporter?
Well, I will say that there was a time when we were doing some yard sign assembly in my kitchen, and I'm looking around, and we've kind of like, if you've ever done yard sign assembly, you've got like the metal frame and you've got the cardboard thing, and you're trying to put them together. So it's a good 2-person job. And so people are lined up across from each other, and there's this blind woman working with this athletic cyclist, and there is they aren't really talking about it, but a person I happen to know is in the Democratic Socialists working with a woman who I also happen to know is a Republican, but that's not what they're talking about. And they're working across from each other, putting the signs together, and we're all like getting along in my kitchen, and it was really it just warmed me. It's like we can disagree on other stuff, and we can all agree we want our community to be better.
Or maybe you just are really good at throwing parties, Sally. Like, is that what's happening? What was in those hors d'oeuvres or appetizers?
I'll test Sally throwing good parties.
Oh, really?
That's for sure.
Okay. Snacks.
But it may have been something more than that.
A sense of purpose. Well, if an elementary school teacher and a parking operations expert can come together, I can't imagine the potential, right, in such an organization. Thank you for sharing that. So I know we want to actually discuss the substance of Fort, and what is at stake for people who don't know anything. I mean, what's going on right now? I know, Sally, you were mentioning a summer of campaigning and activism. What are you inviting people to learn about?
Right now, we're at this interesting point because we have both a rail and we have a trail in process. We have multiple grants going on, and multiple agencies involved, and it can be somewhat complicated. But what a lot of people are aware of is that about a year ago, the RTC came out with some breathtakingly large numbers and said, well, that's what it's going to cost to have a train. And then they just sort of let that lie for several months over this last summer, and the narrative began to develop in our community. Oh my goodness, the train's too expensive, it's never going to happen. And they didn't publish any of the substantial data that backed up that number. And so we couldn't really engage with that, because I don't know where you came up with this number. It sounds big, and when the data got published, then we looked into it, we saw, actually, half of that number is just contingency. And we also have the staff had asked the consultants for a, quote, low maintenance plan, which is kind of code for high cost. Because you think about it, if you're, I don't know, your toilet stops working and you need a new flapper, you could maintain it and go to the hardware store and buy a new flapper, or you could replace the whole toilet. And yeah, replacing the whole toilet might be like more low maintenance, but really, that's not necessary.
Right,
Just get a plastic flapper.
Sure.
And so what they did was at every opportunity, they bought a whole new thing and in the plan. And then that price includes maintenance and operations for 30 years. So suddenly it was like, oh, well, that number is like actually not very realistic at all. But it started to change the conversation. So we did some research about, well, how much money is available? And it turns out there's this program, this federal program called Corridor ID, and it is funded by the FRA, the Federal Railway Administration. And the money's coming from the FRA, but it's being administered by the Caltrans Division of Rail. And our little corridor is in that program. And it is actually millions of dollars is being spent planning rail for Santa Cruz County. It's just not happening at the local level. And so that's really good news. That's really good news that needs to be like understood by more people, because when some of the RTC staff start crying poverty, oh, train would be nice, but it's so expensive. We don't have any sources for money. Actually, there is a source for money, and it's being spent now developing our rail line, and it's going to look at those overpriced costs and look for cost savings there. And so we've already had 3 years of planning. There's another 6 years that are going to be paid for by the FRA, and it's going when that's over, we'll be competitive to apply for the construction money in 6 years from now. And so that's, of course, if we don't blow it by doing something stupid like tearing out the tracks. And so that's why we're doing this rally on May 20th. And you can go to railandtrail.org to learn about it, because it's really important that we don't tear out the tracks so we can stay in this program that is funding the development of our rail line.
So I guess, in my mind, if the federal government wanted to give, say, me free money, I would do the things. I would cross the T's and dot the I's to get free money. I'm not sure who wouldn't want free money. So yeah, I would certainly hope that if the elected officials or whoever, right, the RTC are responsible, that I don't know, money does not grow on trees. I don't know any other way to say it. What about you, Matt? Do you think money grows on trees, or should we turn down free money?
I think one of the challenges has been over the last year or two is that the discussion about our participation in the Corridor ID program has been very limited, and that opportunity has really been not fully and openly explained or discussed with the Regional Transportation Commission members. So I think they were kind of behind the curve a little bit, uninformed, and we had to do a lot of work to make that issue get the attention it deserved, and so we keep trying to articulate that, but it is something that I think was kind of there used to be a term that some administrations were accused of, benign neglect. And it feels like there was a certain amount of that in terms of really explaining this process. But it has been explained to the commission now, and we just want to keep pushing to get that attention paid to this, because we're in a place right now in that process where the Office of Rail is going to do what's called a service development plan, which will look at the work that's been done at our level and really criticize it evaluate it and suggest ways to save money and ways that it might be through phasing and other strategies possible to move forward with the project. And we think that's really great because this is not going to cost the county of Santa Cruz and the regional transportation any money at all. This work will be fully funded by the Office of Rail and the FRA.
You're listening to Talk of the Bay. My guests are Matt Farrell and Sally Arnold from Friends of the Rail and Trail. And we were just talking about how, I think, Matt, you were mentioning this sense of benign neglect of understanding what needs to be done. Now, who would be responsible for educating the commissioners if they're not in a position of information?
Well, I think there was a vacuum, and this information wasn't really being fully explained to the commission. And so Fort stepped in and started bringing this information forward to the commissioners and asking for presentations from the Office of Rail to the commission. And that finally happened with our advocacy. And one of the things that became very clear in that conversation is that if the rails are removed, it gets very hard to have our branch line qualify for federal funding. It's
right. Like if you don't do your homework, you're not going to get the A. Like it's right.
and if the rails are gone, if the rails are gone and a trail is in its place, the funding agencies look at that as kind of a lack of commitment to moving forward on the project. And also politically,
right.
It makes it really hard because you have this trail and people are using the trail, and the talk about removing that trail and installing rail, it's going to get huge resistance. So the inertia is going to be huge in terms of supporting a rail project. So that's why we're so concerned about removing the rails, because it creates all these other complications.
Or as any adult might have said to a child, like, are you serious right now? You want to hang out with your friends and you have a test tomorrow? Right? So there are certain actions which will telegraph a lack of seriousness. So that makes sense in terms of the urgency. So
yeah, and the reason they're the people who have always wanted to tear out the tracks and opposed transit have been kind of waiting for this moment. What's happened is there's the quote, what is called by the RTC the quote ultimate trail, which is a trail next to the tracks, and it allows us to have both rail and trail. And then there is what has been termed the interim trail, quote unquote, which is tear out the tracks and put the trail in their place. And the idea that is the thing we voted on in 2022 that nobody wanted. Well, it's spectacularly unpopular. I won't say nobody wanted it. There's like 20% of the people who wanted it, but 25%. So it's not a popular vision, but the because there are some cost overruns right now with the trail design in that would go from San Lorenzo River to State Park Drive in Aptos. The people who have always wanted to tear out the tracks are using it as an opportunity. Oh, look at ultimate trail, so expensive. So let's just tear out the tracks and use the quote interim trail instead. Though, as Matt explained, it will not be interim; it will be forever. And then we will have made a choice. It's like telling people you can only have one or the other, but we really can have both. It will be more expensive and it will take more time. And it's complicated, but we can have both. And we can have nice things. We just have to work on it. And so we then looked at, well, where else in the state have they managed to somehow preserve their tracks where, a side-by-side answer might be expensive? Because there's places on the trail along the right of way where it, build it side by side requires a retaining wall, like some people may have seen on the wharf to the West Side Trail, where there's a big retaining wall, and they were able to build the trail right next to the tracks, but retaining walls are expensive. And so it would be cheaper if they could, in some places where the space is constrained, move the trail right onto the tracks, but preserve the tracks. Think about like how on Chestnut Street in Santa Cruz, the tracks are right there in the asphalt, or Walker Street in Watsonville, or Market Street in San Francisco. It's really common, right? You put tracks in asphalt, trains can run, people can walk over them. The thing is if you are a cyclist or person in a wheelchair, you might know that there's a little space between the asphalt and the rail that where your tire can get caught, and that's dangerous. But they make a thing called flangeway fillers that are meant to fill that spot. And then what you have, if you are a pedestrian or a cyclist or a person in a wheelchair, is just a smooth surface to walk or ride on. That's not a problem. But if you are a train, you're much heavier, and you depress that plastic, and you can roll over it, and then it just pops back into position for the pedestrian or the cyclist. And that's probably a good answer for us in this mid-county trail. There's not going to be a lot of trains running there right now anyway, because there's some washouts further south between Aptos and Watsonville. So it's not going to get a lot of train traffic, and we can use it as a trail for now. And that way we stay competitive for that FRA money, and we have a cheaper trail to build that is that can probably come in within the limits of the Active Transportation Plan grant that our county was given to build this trail. This is another example, I think, of where, I spoke about it earlier, where Fort is a big tent. And it's like, yeah, we would rather see the ultimate trail that's next to the tracks. But we see that that's just not available to us right now. So the compromise is this hybrid trail that is sometimes next to the tracks and sometimes on the tracks. And again, this is where Fort really is the compromise group. We're not train only, we're not trail only, we're everybody in. And so that's the thing we need the commissioners to vote for. That kind of a hybrid trail is in design right now, and it will be brought to the commissioners for a vote. We don't know exactly when, maybe August, maybe September, and we want them ready to vote for it so they can save both the trail grant money and the rail grant money, so we can have both. And they need to be able to think broadly about that and recognize you've got two important grants at stake. You need to save them now, and you need to save them both, and the only way to do that is to vote for this hybrid trail.
And there is an example of this that was implemented in Humboldt County. So there's a example that we've brought to the attention of the Regional Transportation Commission, and staff at the city and county have reached out and talked with staff at Humboldt County. So there's a model that can be used to move forward on this.
Is there a way for listeners to see what you're talking about or see that example?
I think we have information on our website.
We sure do, railandtrail.org. And after you have signed up to come to the rally on May 20, then go click to the, I think the tab says something like news and information or something, and then you'll see our blog posts. And there is one all about the hybrid trail design. There is also another one all about the corridor ID. We are like total transit nerds, full of information. So if you want data, go to our blog posts and you will get more about transportation policy than you ever wanted to know.
That's great. So I did want to ask about how, say, bikers react when you share news of the flangeway. Is that exciting to them? Do they get it? Does anybody want to take that question?
I think that cyclists are a wide-ranging group, and there are a lot of differences of opinion, but I think a lot of people who want to use the trail, I think, see this as a good solution because, speaking for myself, I use a bicycle to get around now, and so does Sally, but I'm not sure that in 5 to 10 years, God willing that I'm still here, I will be able to ride my bike and have something like a train as an option to for my mobility. Seems like a dual benefit. So I think preserving those tracks is very attractive to me as a cyclist based on kind of the long-term benefits.
Well, and I would say also, even in the short term, a train expands my range. I am not like one of those gonzo cyclists that's like cycling up to the summit and back in the morning before breakfast. I'm tootling around town with my bike basket and my groceries, and I am not going to bike to Watsonville. I mean, it's just too far for me. But I would roll my bike onto the train, and then I would roll my bike off the train, and then I could go bike to see my friends in Watsonville without having to fight traffic, without having to look for parking. And I could, I think about like this, I don't know if anybody else has noticed, there's this social dynamic where like, if I'm going to have dinner with my friends who maybe live in Aptos, we never have dinner at their house. It's too big a pain for me as a West Sider to get to Aptos at dinner time. I always have them to my house, right? Because that's because of the way the traffic flow is, and just our social relations are going to totally change when we can take the train. And as a cyclist, I imagine I roll my bike onto that train, and I could take it to San Luis Obispo or Paso Robles, and I could have fun, biking around there and being like on vacation or I could take my bike to Monterey and go to the Monterey Bay Aquarium and have and enjoy a day, and then come home and then bike home. It solves the first mile, last mile problems. It would expand my range as a cyclist. It'd be all these places I could go that I would never, that right now, if I want to go there, it's a car. So right. I think it's an asset to cyclists in particular.
Thank you, Sally. So, I know you were talking about traveling within the county and kind of going elsewhere. And I was just thinking, if people are fortunate enough to go somewhere, anywhere for vacation, I don't know anyone who thinks, wow, I can't wait to just drive within my destination if they have free time. So that I was just thinking about that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons that we have business support for the Rail and Trail, because if you think about all those businesses that are within walking distance of our rail line, I mean, half our county lives within a mile of the rail line, and many of our businesses and our tourist attractions are on the coast where the rail line is. And if you can get your workers and your customers to your hotel, your restaurant, your boardwalk, your theater without having to build a parking garage for them, you're saving money. I mean, you think about how businesses are built out in the suburbs, and there's this giant acreage of parking lot and a small little space for the actual business. It's really expensive for businesses to maintain parking. And if they can get their people in and out without having to have without having to provide parking, it's a real savings for them. And so imagine tourists without traffic. People come on the train, they stop at Capitola Village and, build a sandcastle, they go to the boardwalk, they ride the roller coaster, they spend the night in a hotel, they go out to dinner, they walk downtown and spend some money, and then they take the train home again. And, it would so help the economy of our community.
Thank you, Sally. I just want to remind everybody that you're listening to KSQD. Also, KSQT, we broadcast from Prudale, Salinas, Santa Cruz on 90.7 FM, 89.7 FM, and 89.5 FM. You can also find us on your smart device requesting ksqd.org, and we live stream. So thanks for listening. I'm here with Matt Farrell and Sally Arnold of FORT, the Friends of the Rail and Trail, and we've been touching on a lot of sort of meaty or substantial topics like the mobility offered as people age, whether they're biking, and I know Sally biked to the studio. I saw you. I was like, what is that, Sally? So thank you for biking and saving the environment, and businesses enjoying the prospect of rail. Now, I know that you have the rally, the 20th. You've both talked about how it's a big tent, and the idea is to make a rail and a trail available. Why do people think we can only have one? I know that we've talked about, like, yes, we can have nice things, but there's a narrative of being only able to have one. Why do people have this misunderstanding? Or why are people confused? There is a lot of confusion.
Well, I think the universe is kind of divided into some groups. I think the people in the middle are kind of supportive of kind of the mixed option of rail and trail. I think there are people on the cyclist side, not the majority, but a portion of them. And when people were talking about Measure D, there was a lot of talk about the idea that you could have this bike highway. And I think those cyclists see this corridor as an option to have a very high-speed corridor for cyclists that is largely like a recreational opportunity, and that would be hard to accomplish with a rail and a trail solution.
And just to clarify, when you say D, do you mean Measure D 2022?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
measured.
But I thought you're bicyclists. Aren't you going to take the side of bicyclists? Are you throwing bicyclists in a ditch?
No,
No.
I think what I'm saying is the main purpose of this trail system is to accommodate both cyclists and pedestrians, and to respect the fact that both pedestrians and cyclists are using this path or this trail, and people should behave responsibly, and the focus should not be on speed and how quickly you can get from place to place on this corridor, but the joint use of it. That you want to protect access and mobility for all the people on the trail. I live over in the Seabright neighborhood, and it's been really exciting to see how many people use Arana Gulch. But it's unfortunate when there are people walking on the trail and cyclists move through that corridor at a speed that I think is kind of disrespectful to all the users of the corridor. And so I just think that there's some people who, kind of see these opportunities as more focused strictly on the needs of cyclists alone, as opposed to the full community that needs to access those.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, Sally.
I think Matt's right that there are people who are just focused on them, basically on themselves, their own needs. It's like, I'm a cyclist, I want to bike fast, and there you go. But there's people who are just like, I don't ride a bike, so why do I care? I just want to train so I can get places. So there are some people who just focus on themselves and their own needs. They don't have the imagination to think about, well, there's other people who are not me.
Wow. Newsflash.
I'm not in a wheelchair, but maybe I should support something that's accessible for people who are. So there's that. But again, we look at the vote on the No Way Greenway vote that was took down the 22 Measure D that would tear out the tracks to stunning defeat. And I'm looking at these numbers. It's like 79% in the city of Santa Cruz, and 83% up in the San Lorenzo Valley, and 75% in the South County area, 79% in District 3, North, the North Coast area. I mean, huge numbers of people see that we can have both, see that both is better for our community. Most people do not, there are absolutely selfish people who only think of themselves, but most of us don't. Most of us are caring people who think of others and want to have a solution, for more than just me. And I think that there is a narrative of poverty that's really grown in our country recently, I think, of like, oh, we can't have nice things. Oh, we don't have enough money to take care of the poor. We don't have enough money to provide health care. There's other things for which there's always money. There's always money to widen a highway. There's always money to start a war. But there's, suddenly when it becomes human needs or the environment, oh, I don't know, that costs money. And it's just an issue of priorities. So I think that, that's partly, why some people think you can only have one or the other is they've accepted that narrative of poverty, or they're only thinking of one thing that they personally want. But I think we have to remember that this is a super popular project, and most people in our community do see multiple points of view, and we can have it all. We just have to plan carefully for it.
Thank you, Sally. I do remember a while back, and maybe one of you are more educated than I on this matter, but I think even the U.S. Chamber of Commerce was working for decades on specifically passenger rail or rail, and they were working in a bipartisan environment to make things happen, and the result was some kind of understanding between chambers of commerce and unions and like elected officials. So those are not always factions that agree, and so that just goes back to what you've mentioned about having a really big tent and thinking of others, but even having stakeholders who are each desiring something attractive about the rail and trail. So thank you for that.
Yeah, well, and the other thing is, this might surprise people, but actually, in the current federal administration is putting more money into intercity rail and into this corridor ID program, not less. So again, big tent. Who knew? But, the funding sources right now are looking good for rail in our country. And we should take advantage of it now while it's happening.
Again, free money.
Yeah.
Like I personally, I'm a bargain shopper, but if someone wanted to give me free money, yeah, I would. If they said you have to be, don't throw things in the trash if you want us to give more money for them. So thank you. So I know we only have a little bit more time. So while you're with us, I know that we've talked about Measure D 2022. We've talked about the rally.
Yep, May 20, railandtrail.org.
Yes, the rally. So what can people do, right? I know, Matt, for example, you've mentioned for educating commissioners on the Regional Transportation Commission. What can listeners do? And maybe actually one of you can just explain what is the Regional Transportation Commission? How receptive are commissioners to listeners voters advocacy?
The Regional Transportation Commission is the body that is responsible for transportation throughout the county of Santa Cruz. And so a large portion of the funding for transportation comes through the Regional Transportation Commission. And it's made up of the 5 boards of supervisors, representatives from each of the cities, and then 3 representatives from the Santa Cruz Metro Transit District. Altogether, there are 12 members. And they basically are grounded in kind of the perspective of the agencies they represent, but they're also very attentive to what the residents of the region communicate to them in terms of their concerns. So it's important for people to, in the coming months, really make their voices heard about the support for preservation of the rail, because I think it will get the attention of the commission and help make sure that they are making an informed and wise decision in the coming months.
Yeah, and if people want to, like, let's say you got to work, can't come to the rally, but you would like to be, more involved, or even just a little bit following it. If you go to railandtrail.org and you hit the subscribe or the newsletter button, we send out a newsletter maybe every other month or so that it keeps you informed on what's going on. And then if there is an opportunity to take action, like there's going to be an important vote coming up, we will send out an action alert. And so you don't get a ton of email from us, but when you get it, it's either very informative or it's giving you the opportunity to take action. And we will explain what the issue is. We explain we have a link so you can just hit it and you'll have an emailer to go right to the person. And those communications from constituents are important for these people. We elected them and they're supposed to be doing what we want. And we told them what we wanted in 2022 by a landslide, and they sometimes need to be reminded.
Thank you, Sally. So just to get a little bit specific, of the 12-person body that the Regional Transportation Commission is, I'm counting like 9 of them are elected officials, and then 3 are on the Metro.
Though many of those people who are on the Metro are also elected because they serve on Metro because they're coming from a city council.
I see. So actually, that's enough. I mean, politicians like to get elected or reelected. Oh, yes, Matt.
3 Metro representatives are representing the Metro, but one of them is not an elected official. So 11 of the 12.
So
Okay.
the 3 Metro commissioners on the RTC now are Maria Orozco, who's City Council of Watsonville, right? Shebra Kalantari Johnson, who's City Council of Santa Cruz, and
Fabian Leonor.
And
he's not an elected official.
that's right. He was appointed,
Right.
because he's a writer. So they appoint the Metro Commission is made up of a lot of elected officials, but they're also representing some constituencies like Metro writers, and Fabian is a Metro writer, right?
Do we want to shout out the rest? The rest of the commissioners, if we've identified 3,
Well,
the 9. Can anybody rattle off all the 9? This is like a quiz.
Fred Keeley, who's the mayor of Santa Cruz, Eduardo Montesino, who's on the city council
Of Watsonville.
Steve Clark, who's from the city of Scotts Valley, Jerry Jensen, who's from the city of Capitola.
And then there's the 5 county supervisors.
5 county supervisors: Felipe Hernandez, Monica Martinez, Kim DeSerpa, Justin Cummings, and Manu Koenig.
All right. Wow, that was amazing. Okay, so we have identified that almost all of the regional transportation commissioners are elected officials, and Sally, you were saying that voters have been making themselves heard or expressing themselves with things like the vote in 2022. Now, for people who might not understand how politics works, what is the role that advocacy plays? I mean, what's your organizing philosophy? If we can just go like big picture, why does advocacy work?
Well, I think there's that classic quote from Thomas Jefferson, the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. And, it's like it would be lovely if we could just go to the polls every other year, vote, and then like go home and rest and not think about it again because it was all going to roll out the way we wanted. But unfortunately, that is not the way it works. And we need to be on top of it. And we can't all be on top of everything, which is why, a lot of times we, become members or donate to organizations that are like following issues we care about. And then we count on, who's ever in leadership in that organization who's just going to focus on really follow that and pay attention to it. And that's what Friends of the Rail and Trail does. We read all the agendas and we read all the policy papers and we research the funding sources, and we're deep in the work so that we can then synthesize it and make it easy for the the average person to understand, and try to make it simple and easy for average voters to participate in politics in between elections in a way that's meaningful and doesn't absorb your entire life. And so that's where subscribing, going to railandtrail.org, subscribing to our newsletter and action alerts will then allow you to be we'll just send you opportunities now and then to be an activist, and it's fun.
Is it because you throw the good parties, or is that is that the secret?
Well, I think it's also, a positive, it's a positive action. You're standing for something, you're trying to build a better future. And I think that is in itself heartening. We see so often kind of disappointment and skepticism and distrust, and it's very important to have a project or have work where you actually can feel like you're building for the future. And I think this is one of those projects. It's transformative.
Wow. That's wow. It's like I have the feels like hearing that.
And there's clear. There's a clear example not too far from us. I happen to have a daughter that lives in San Rafael, and so the Sonoma Marin rail transit project is an immense success, and it's really united those two counties in a way that you can't achieve with a road system, and it's very popular with people in the county. So I think, and they are building a trail adjacent to that rail line also. So it can happen, and we have a neighbor just north of us who's a good example of it.
Thank you, Matt. Now, you mentioned Humboldt, right? So I don't know if Sonoma and Humboldt, are these wealthy counties? Do they just, do they have money raining down on them? Are they wealthier than say, Santa Cruz County? Is there some secret they have that we're not, privy to? Are we different from them?
I think Humboldt is not significantly more wealthy it's a poorer county than Santa Cruz
And
County.
their example of their trail is a bargain trail, which is why we think we should follow that example in a place where we need to do cost savings. So we can definitely learn from them.
You said it's a what trail?
Hybrid. It's Humboldt trail. The Humboldt Trail is what we're calling a hybrid trail.
Oh.
Sometimes it's beside the tracks. Sometimes it's on the tracks. So it's a little bit of both. It's a hybrid, and it's a budget trail. It was a very inexpensive trail for them to build, as these things go. And so when we're having trouble meeting a budget limit, it's a good choice for us, and we can learn from Humboldt, and we should.
Thank you. Well, since we have a June election, I know you guys have a survey. Do you want to talk about the process of the survey and why fans of the Rail and Trail would want to read through the responses or kind of get an understanding of where candidates stand?
Thanks for asking, Meilin. It's really who we elect means a lot in terms of how the Rail and Trail project goes forward, as well as all the other things in our community that we care about. So Friends of the Rail and Trail sent all the candidates for City Council and for the Board of Supervisors a survey with some simple questions on it about their support for the Rail and Trail. And you can find that on our website, railandtrail.org, and if you click into the latest news or some tablet information, you'll see the blog post that lists that shows the results of the survey, and then you can click through to read their long form answers. It's interesting because it's such a popular project and candidates know it's a popular project. A lot of times it's important to read their long form answers. Sometimes they say, yes, I like the rail and trail. And then when you read their long form answer, yeah, in 30 years we could have a train, but they're not interested in making it happen today. So it's important to read deeply and learn who these candidates are and what they support. It also doesn't hurt to go look at their financials and find out who's supporting them. There's an old saying in politics, you dance with them what brung you. And that's a good predictor of what people are going to do when they get into office.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is Ford as a 501c3, we do not make political endorsements because we're under the sponsorship of a nonprofit, but we do want to provide important critical information to the voters so they can make an important decision. So this is our effort to try and provide that transparency, so as you make those important decisions in June, you have the information you need to make it. Not all the candidates who are important to the Regional Transportation Commission run in June, so there'll be another survey in November that'll be important for voters to review, because those candidates are also going to be potential members of the Regional Transportation Commission.
Do you guys ever sleep at those Friends of the Rail and Trail? People are not, they haven't even voted in June, and you guys are thinking about providing information to voters for November. Is that, do people just slam like tons of espresso, or like what's going on over there?
Well, as Robert Earl Keen said, I think it was Robert Earl Keen, I just want to remind folks that the road goes on forever and the party never ends.
Okay, wow, that's awesome.
We wouldn't do it if we didn't enjoy it. We're just like way too much fun together.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for answering that question. Now we're coming down to the last few minutes of this program. What would you give as homework to listeners? What's your ask?
Well, join us on the 20th of May, and if you're not able to do that, then go to our website and subscribe to our newsletter and follow railandtrail.org.
Yeah.
And we'll try and be a good partner in shaping a better future for our county.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Railandtrail.org.
And we're also on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and Blue Sky.
Oh, wow.
So if that's where you operate, find us there, and we can keep you informed in that way too. Though obviously, newsletters are more in depth than a social media post, but so we encourage people to go to our website, railandtrail.org.
Do you have cute pictures on Instagram, or?
We do. We have pictures of trail construction. We have pictures of people on the trail.
Wow.
We have pictures of trains.
That's awesome. That sounds really cute.
It turns out that our trail construction photos are some of our more popular posts.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. It's all about the nerds.
Wow. Trail construction.
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. Well, all right. Thank you so much for joining me today. We've been with Matt Farrell and Sally Arnold of the Friends of the Rail and Trail. They have a rally May 20th. And where is it and what time?
10 to noon. And if you sign up on our website, railandtrail.org, you will get all the details. It's going to be at the intersection of 17th and the tracks near Simpkins Swim Center.
Thank you, Sally. All right. Well, I've been your host, Meilin Obinata. You've been listening to Talk of the Bay on KSQD. I want to thank Nyanko Nyasu for engineering, Howard Feldstein, and all the wonderful volunteers and staff of K-Squid. So, yeah, thanks for listening.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.